everyone, and welcome to the Teach Middle East podcast. I am Lisa Grace. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking to Catherine Erpen, and she is the principal at George Floyd Academy, and that's in Abu Dhabi. And I'm speaking to her at a fabulous time because they're getting ready to move into their great big campus on Reem Island. So look out, watch this space. It's promising to be a very, very nice school. I haven't seen the current school, and I'm hoping to go and visit them in their new home when that opens up at the start of the new academic year.
You are listening to the Teach Middle East podcast, connecting, developing, and empowering educators.
Welcome, Catherine.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So today we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're talking about it via the lens of a school leader, Catherine, who has done work around this topic. Now, she does not profess to be an expert. So if you're listening to this podcast, Catherine is one school leader who has made it her duty to become educated in the area, and her education continues, her work continues. But what interested me about her and the work she's doing is that she became intentional about what she was doing. She became curious about the topic, and that's really all we ask. So, Catherine, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
And can you tell us a little bit about you and your school?
Yeah, so I work, as you mentioned, at George Floyd Academy, Abu Dhabi. At the moment, it's a relatively small school. We're actually primary only. So we go from KG1 to grade 5. We are an IB school. So we do the primary years program, and we're American licensed as well. We have a really diverse student body. So we've got students from about 51 nationalities, and our staff are also quite diverse. And so intentionally so, just to match the students. Yeah.
How long have you been an educator? How long have you been teaching and leading schools?
Almost 20 years. Can you believe it?
No, I can't. I'm looking at you on the screen, so no, I cannot.
This is actually my 20th year. Yeah.
Really? So 20 years in education. Can you think of why you entered this field? That what drove you to education?
Yeah, do you know, when I was younger, I actually used to be a gymnastic coach. So that's a little bit different. And it was actually, I wasn't planning on going into teaching actually originally. I decided I wanted to be a lawyer, but I was working as a gymnastic coach. And I remember just this moment when I was helping this child learn to do a handstand for themselves and just seeing them get it. The child was just like absolutely delighted. And it kind of just gave me this feeling. And I don't know what it was, but it just kind of, I decided then I wanted to go into education, wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to kind of help people get that feeling.
It's that feeling of seeing someone learn and know that you helped in that process. And and over your career, how have you seen the profession change?
Whew, that's a good question. I think for sure, you know, the use of technology has obviously shifted things significantly. For me, though, what I think changed was when I moved overseas. So I actually started in the UK. I was only there for 3 years, and the majority of my career was actually working in international schools. So that was a huge shift for me. And then every change that I've made, every new country I've gone to, I've learned something new, and I've just realized and felt like, oh my goodness, I know nothing, you know, as you're learning more and more.
Yeah.
So I'd say, you know, I think the context that you work in, I think that just really, I think, sets the tone for how you learn anyway, and how you grow as an educator. And every environment is so different, you know, and so you're using different tools and resources, there's different philosophies, there's all kinds of things that are different in any school context. And then for sure, technology. I mean, I remember back in the UK, I used to like handwrite reports, you know, and I barely handwrite anything these days. So yeah, very different.
Yeah, I remember handwriting reports as well. And can I tell you what I used to do? I used to actually ask friends to help because I don't have the greatest penmanship on earth. So I used to tell them what I wanted written, and they just wrote it for me because it was just nice. I thought no parent will be able to read the scroll if I did it. So I remember those days. And then something else you said about the fact that you've taught in several international schools is that many teachers that I speak to, they always say, listen, when I start my international career, I feel like a early career teacher all over again, like an NQT, because obviously a new place requires a new set of skills, new expertise, and you actually have to become very flexible, very agile. Where are some of the places that you've taught? What are some of the things you've done?
Yeah, so I first started off in Chiang Mai in northern Thailand, and I was there for 4 years. So I went as a homeroom teacher and got asked to be the K-3 department head. And I transitioned actually very early on in my career into administration, and I was the elementary coordinator there. And that was like a K-12 American international school. And so that just opened up my eyes to the world. And, I didn't know very much about international education then. And so then I was like, okay, what's next? And I knew I just couldn't go home. I knew I needed another adventure. And so I moved to Japan, to Sendai in northern Japan. So it's actually about a 1 hour flight north of Tokyo. And that was a completely different school. They were actually, by the end of the time I was there, they were moving into the PYP, but they were more of an American international school as well. And so, just a very different context again, run very differently, different people, but just amazing experiences.
I'm seeing a thread. So on this podcast, we're talking about diversity, we're talking about inclusion, and I noticed that your career has taken you into various places, and you've met and dealt with, a myriad of people. And I'm kind of guessing that when you have exposed yourself to so many different cultures, you begin to have a broader and a deeper understanding of the world. And, what some people might find difficult, you have more of an open mind to. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say that's true for sure. I think, a lot of people would like to say they're open-minded, but what that means and looks like can mean different things to different people, right? Yeah. So for me, I just think it's really important. Like if I say I'm open-minded, then I need to be very intentional about how I go about that, how I go about learning and growing. And so for me, it's really important that I am interacting with people from different places, because the perspectives that they bring just really change people. They change me. I'm not the same person that I was when I left the UK almost 20 years ago. I'm very different. And these experiences and the people particularly, I've learned kind of from them and through them and with them. And it's just been, for me, it's just been a privilege.
You just said you are not the same person you were when you left the UK. Can you pinpoint one major change?
I think it's just my outlook on life. I think, you think a certain way. You grow up in a particular area, or I did. I grew up in a particular part of the UK, and it was actually relatively diverse there, but everybody was British, and what I've learned overseas is, people think their way of doing things is like the right way, and they have very strong opinions about the way other people do things. But actually we can learn so much when we actually pay attention to different cultures, whether that's in an education setting or otherwise, but we have to actually experience it. We have to connect with people. We have to build relationships. And so for me, I think it's just, I feel like my mindset is less fixed. And now I feel like I'm more open to possibilities. And I want people to almost tell me if they don't agree and why they don't agree, because I feel like I need to kind of get as much information as possible. Does that make sense?
Definitely makes sense to me, because that's not the only way you go. If everybody agrees with you, really, what are you learning differently? So if I say to you, what you just said, exactly what I would say, then we both walk away with the same knowledge. Nothing's changed. None of us have grown. We both agree, c'est la vie. But when someone says to you, I think differently, and then proceed to give you their opinion, then you start to learn what they think. Might not be factual. You might not even find it useful, but you would have learned what their thoughts are on a given topic. So that's brilliant. We spoke before, like our pre recording that I wish I recorded. So if you're listening to this, I spoke to Catherine before, and I really wish I had recorded that conversation, because she spoke so passionately about why she is passionate really about diversity and inclusion. And I hope we can encapsulate that again in this conversation. So let me ask, why? Why diversity and inclusion, and why is it so important to you?
Because I think it's about how we treat people. It's about the fact that everybody is a person of value, of worth, and has something to contribute. And I think when we acknowledge that, and when we respect that, and when we invite that into our workplaces, I think the benefits are endless for everybody. You know, I think there's a lot of power actually in really opening up our minds, opening up our hearts, and really just kind of embracing the differences that we have, and learning from one another. So for me, it's just, you know, you said before, I've done lots of reading, and I'm still reading and learning and growing. But I read a book in the summer, and it's actually kind of fed into the work that we've done this year at the school about creating a culture of dignity. And so it's a place where we want to make sure that everybody feels valued, included. We want people to feel like they belong, you know, and not everybody does, and really belong, you know, really feel part of something. And in that way, I think people feel empowered as well. They feel like, they just feel good about themselves, good about the environment and the culture in which they're in. And then I think you start to see amazing things happen. I think then you start to see people coming with their ideas and wanting to make changes, you know. When we talk about distributive leadership, I think this is how sometimes it happens when people actually feel comfortable and confident in their environment. You know, they can do something, they can take charge, and they can be a leader in their whatever work it is they're doing.
Yeah. What are some of those things that you've been doing in your school to make sure that the diversity and inclusion is intentional?
Yeah, so certainly hiring. So for me, it's really important that the children see themselves in the staff in the school, and not divided according to the type of job they have, which I know can be commonplace, you know, in many parts of the world, actually. And so for the children, you know, we've got, in any year, it's changed. This year, we've got 51 nationalities, but we've had up to about 65 in the past. And so, you know, if we've only got one nationality represented by the teaching staff, like, what does that actually communicate to the children? So it's really important that they see themselves. And so when we're hiring, I do like a staff analysis and look at where we're hiring from. You know, there are certain regulations that we need to work in, and we are an English speaking school, so we have to have the certain things that we need to have in place. But wherever possible, if we can kind of intentionally increase that diversity, we will. And in that way, it's actually kind of adding to the richness of the experiences that the children have as well. I really try to hire people who speak more than one language. So the majority of our staff are bi or trilingual as well. And this is incredibly helpful. Even just recently, we just had a new Brazilian student, and one of our teachers speaks Portuguese. And so she was able to kind of help him as he's just kind of adjusting in the school. So there's lots of things that we can do to help children transition as well when we're intentional about hiring like that. In another way is through the resources. So I don't know if you've seen the TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story. You probably have. Google it. There we go. But I love that TED Talk. And so I just think it's really powerful, and it just reminds me of just how important it is that the children read literature written by different authors from different parts of the world, that we engage with artwork from different parts of the world. You know, anything that we're sharing with the children, the different role models that we're showing them are reflective of the entire community. And so I think, you know, there's always work to be done. There's always more we could do. But I think if that's in our mind all the time, that's a good place to start.
Yeah, I like that. If it's in your mind, I would even go further to say if it's at the forefront of your mind, then that is actually a good place to start. Now, hiring intentionally and doing this work cannot be without its challenges. It is a very evocative topic. When you say diversity, equity, and inclusion, loads of people have different opinions. Some people may think, well, you know, it shouldn't be this way or it should be that way. What kind of resistance have you encountered in doing this work within your school, if you could share?
Yeah. I mean, I think assumptions can be made, right, before you actually, and I think this is not just true here, but in many parts of the world. You know, if you know a person is from a certain place, then there might be a stereotype. And so there'll be prejudices, you know, that come through. And there can even be discrimination, right? that takes place. And so this can be really, really challenging in any workplace. But I think it's just important to have conversations, At the end of the day, I hire, outstanding teachers from all parts of the world. They're all outstanding, but they're all different. And I think it's about, it's about how you have the conversation. So, if it's not grounded in your school philosophy as well, then it's more difficult. So for us, I mentioned we've got this culture of dignity. Well, that's supported by some values, and they're kind of core values that we have, but they're also aspirational. And so with that, in everything we do, if it's connected to our values, then when we speak to people that may have a problem with that, or they may have questions and may be not sure about, whether it's around accent or whether it's around English level or whatever, or even qualifications from different countries, that some people can say, well, it's much better if you get your qualification in the United States and it's not so good if it's from England, People have different opinions about where you get your qualifications from. But I think you just got to hold true to your values. You have to live them. It's no good having a set of values if they're not part of the school culture. You've got not a leg to stand on if you just kind of have them on sitting on a wall and you're not living them out.
Yeah. All right. Now, I know within this region, international schools sell an image. They sell an image to the parents and they sell aspirations to the parents. This is just the nature of the beast. It's where we are. It's what it is. Now, when you're trying to become more diverse and inclusive, you will meet parents, you will meet challenging parents who will say, I want the teacher of my child to look a certain way and sound a certain way. How do you get that parent to still come on board? Or how do you even meet that challenge?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think if you come to our school, you're not going to find two teachers that look alike because they're all from different parts of the world and they've got different skin colours and different nationalities and that kind of thing. And so, what we say to parents when they come in, that, that the teachers are all, outstanding teachers. They have all the right, more than some cases, the right qualifications and lots of international experience and speak different languages. And we celebrate the teachers that we have. But we let them know that, like, from any year, you could get a teacher from England, you could get a teacher from Spain, you could get a teacher from Canada, it could be from India, it could be from all kinds of places. And so when we're sharing this, we're just very transparent. I think you can't hide these things. You have to show who you are. This year, we've actually created a teacher wall. And so we've got all of the teachers profiled with their nationality flag kind of on there. And so we're sharing that with the parents. And this is who we are. We are a diverse community, not just with the students, but with the staff as well. And we celebrate it. And, our parents are happy. Our parents love the teachers. In fact, some of our teachers who perhaps in some parts of the world may not be so well received are valued here. They're treasured and they're very much loved. So I think it's open, transparent, it's a conversation.
Yeah, I think you've cracked something that many schools are struggling to crack, because when I do look around at the profile of schools, they're very much focused. So for example, if it's a British school, I find that you typically have a certain profile. It's almost as if they want to sell Britain as being all white, and that there are no other, skin tones or races within Britain. And so I wonder, for a school that's offering, whether it's IB or the British curriculum, etc., how do they get over telling parents that we value diversity, even when some parents will insist, no, yeah, I want my child with a British teacher, and this is what my child's teacher should look like.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're pretty clear on parents can't choose the teacher. We're not able to do that. It gets very complicated. So, but I do think it's about being intentional, and it's about this being infused into all aspects of the work. We're really fortunate because we're an IB World School. So it's very much of the heart of the IB programs. They have the learner profile and these 10 attributes, which are linked to becoming like an internationally minded student. And so that really helps because it's embedded within everything we do. So all of our units of inquiry, we situate learning in the local context, but we bring in the experiences and perspectives of different community members. And that's within the lessons and the learning from the children, but we also include the parents. I mean, parent partnership is like absolutely critical to the work that we do. I mean, it's just so important that it's not just a kind of a relationship just for, oh yeah, we hear you. Like if you respect and value everybody's opinion, then you respect and value parents and you listen to them, seek their feedback and you incorporate it. We need to kind of, working as a team at the end of the day, it's really important that we're all on the same page. And so I think you're open, you're transparent, you engage, and I think you just infuse everything into all aspects of the work.
Yeah, I think since the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and there's been a light shone on the lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion in international schools recently. A good friend of mine, Kevin Simpson, does a lot of work around that right now. And I find that schools, they have the best intentions. They want to become more diverse places of learning, especially in their staff room, but they're struggling with getting that started. But you've cracked part of it. And so I'd love to find out what advice you would have for schools that would be looking to get on this journey in a real way, not in a tokenistic, look at us way, but in a real, genuine way.
Well, it's baby steps, I think. First of all, I think you just have to acknowledge that this work is really important. You have to be committed to it. You have to see it as something that's essential. And I really believe it is essential to work in schools. Like, you can't just stay in your own little bubble. That's not life. So I think you kind of have to then decide as a school, I guess, what the first step is. And then you just take baby steps. And sometimes you might take a step forward and feel like you're taking a couple of steps back. But I think you need to be bold. I think you need to, make sure that what you're doing is connected to the values you have as a school and be true to yourself. And as I said before, you have to be willing to engage in difficult conversations and you have to be able to have these discussions. You can't hide this. You can't just kind of not talk about it and hope it goes away. You have to actually do something. And I really think everybody has a responsibility to act. I mean, we're talking about people, right? We're talking about how we interact with one another, and we're talking about the worth that everybody has. And if I go around thinking that I'm better than everybody else, I mean, what kind of person am I? So, I mean, I just think it's our responsibility, and whatever that takes, it has to happen.
Brilliant. I love what you started off with, baby steps, because I think maybe schools look at the agenda of diversity, equity, and inclusion and think it's bigger than them, but it really isn't. I think baby steps, you start looking at, maybe your own value, your mission, look at what the school stands for and maybe start talking to your staff, talking to your governors, talking to your owners, we are in this part of the world, about what are we portraying as a school? Like, we might need to really examine that. And if it means going just by, changing one thing we do, or looking at how we communicate with the parents about what we're doing about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's a start, so that you don't become overwhelmed and just put your head in the sand. Take baby steps.
Yeah. I don't know what, some people get uncomfortable. Maybe there's fear. I don't know. I think if there is any resistance, it's like, where is that coming from? Like, what is that reflective of? So I think you always have to try and get to the root of the problem and try and understand, because I think, everybody's feelings are important. And so it's important, like, we understand the feelings and where they've come from, and then we kind of address it together.
Yeah, we're winding down, but I'm not quite done yet. I will let you go. I feel like, oh my God, we're recording this quite late in the afternoon, and Catherine's had a full day of work, and so have I. But I think this is so important, and we have to look at it. What would you say then if, for example, a parent, so I'm going back to parents, and the reason I'm harping on about this is because when I was leading a school here, I've had parents come to me and literally refuse to have their child in a certain teacher's class because that teacher didn't have the right accent. So it wasn't about skin color. I mean, they're talking to me, I'm a Black woman and leading the school, but they're actually saying to me, they don't want their child in this class because of accent. What do you say to people who have value placed on something as trivial as somebody else's accent?
Well, first of all, all of our students, I mean, there's so many different nationalities, but English is the language of inclusion at the school. And so they have to speak it because there's not another common language. And the same with all of the staff, of course. And so they're hearing all these different nationalities. I will say, I think a lot of children sound American anyway. They kind of have this almost like somewhat American, somewhat international. I don't know. They have this kind of almost neutral accent. They don't come out. Children don't mimic the accent of I think if they were in a certain part, I used to live in North Wales, and I think my accent changed a little bit while I was there. But that's because everybody was kind of Welsh. Here, it's so international anyway in the UAE, and our school in particular, that they don't pick up the accent. And I think that's where some of the fear comes from. I think they think their child's going to have a particular accent, and that's not always the case. Although I did have a few years ago when I started teaching in a school I was in, it was in Chiang Mai, I did have a parent, I think I was the only British teacher at the time, and the family was British. And they wanted me as their teacher because I was British, because they didn't want their child to get an American accent. But it's always a bit of a mix. But
yeah, I get it. It's funny because my kids actually have this neutral, almost American accent, and they've lived there all their lives, and they watch a lot of stuff, and they do have a lot of Americanisms in the way they speak. And I'm going, well, if anything, you should sound more Jamaican than anything else, because that's my heritage. But they have none of that. They absolutely do have that neutral American accent type thing going on. Maybe it's all the video games they watch on YouTube and stuff, I think, that could be causing that. So if you were to have one wish for education going forward, what would that be? I love to ask this question. It's just one of those questions that really gets me going.
Another area of interest for me is the sustainable development goals. And so for me, it's just kind of seeing that achieved, seeing number 4 achieved in relation to education. So that's ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promotion of lifelong learning opportunities for all. I'd love to see that. We're not at a place yet where every child is receiving that quality education. And it's life changing, right? And so that's what I would just love to see happen.
Most head teachers I talk to, that's the one they choose. But I wonder, have you given thought to the fact that with the pandemic, that goal is being set back further and further? And I don't know, do you think we'll hit that anywhere close to 2030?
Oh, hard to say. I think there's a lot of people working in different ways to kind of see that happen. But yeah, I think it's certainly a real challenge. I think that's why, for me, the other kind of thing I think in terms of education is just wanting to kind of inspire and empower children. If that's all we do, right? Obviously educate them and make sure they can read and write and do everything that they need to be able to do. But if they kind of have that self-belief, that self-efficacy, if they know how to learn and can take ownership of that, and if they're kind of inspired and they're supported in their passions and empowered to do something, that's like success to me. If every school created students like that, we'd be doing very well.
Yeah, we would. Gosh, it would be ideal, wouldn't it? I'm hoping that we get somewhere close to, creating a more equitable world for all learners, for all children. It is really, really important. I think the future of the world depends on it. We're talking about the environment, and it is good. But if people aren't educated, it's going to be even harder for them to even work on sustainability and all the other things. I think education needs to be a little bit above some of the other things that we're pushing currently. I've enjoyed our chat. I really have. I think there's a lot more to talk about, but I do want to congratulate you for starting the conversation.
Oh, thank you. I think I said this to you before, though. There's nothing particularly special about me. I just think it's about, care and respect of people. And, I'll do my part, and I'm going to continue to do that. And yeah, it's a journey, right? It's a journey. I'm still learning, and I'm still committed to learning. And I hope more people kind of get on board.
Yes, I do hope so. It is all that you can do, is to be open to learning and open to growing and open to the world. And because if we close ourselves off, we lose the richness. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Catherine.
Most welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Teach Middle East podcast. Visit our website, teachmiddleeast.com, and follow us on social media. The links are in the show notes.